Welcome to the Mental Mastery Golf Podcast by Dare to Dream, the show dedicated to fun, practical mental performance strategies for your golf game. Join mental performance coach Jamie Glazier and co-host Ross Flannigan as they discuss how to manage your mind in one of the craziest sports there is.
Good afternoon. Hello to everybody. Welcome back to the Mental Mastery Golf Podcast. This is your co-host, Ross Flannigan, and on the other end of the phone today, we have the master of the Mental Mastery Golf Podcast, Jamie Glazier, up in Sydney. You can hear the birds chirping, so you're obviously in a nice part of the world. Jamie, how are you today, mate? Where are you?
Roscoe, yes, I'm in a beautiful part of the world and the country, up in Rose Bay at Royal Sydney Golf Club today, so... It's a gorgeous day, and as you say, the birds have been chirping nicely.
Well, we missed our Wednesday wellness golf session this morning, but obviously you're up there doing some work, so all power to you, mate. I hope you have a great session there this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
No problems. Today's podcast is, as we announced on your Instagram, a little bit of a recap and review of the first couple of podcasts by answering some of the questions and some of the notes that we've taken away out of the first two. And like any learning journey, whether it's professional development, whether it's personal development, it's always great to have a recap and a review. And we've got some really, really good questions. So we both thought that it was a great opportunity to answer those and just, give everyone a bit of a deeper personal insight for the guys that have answered the question. And obviously anyone that has listened is going to get more out of it as well. So what do you think about that, Jamie? Should we get straight into the questions, or is there anything else that we want to just touch on?
Yeah, look, I think first and foremost, again, just want to continue to thank everyone for just engaging in the podcast and having, bringing forward some of the questions. The questions that we've got today are just fantastic questions, really high quality questions, obviously very thoughtful golfers out there. So just really appreciate everyone taking the time to put these forward, and I'm ready to get stuck into it.
Well, I think because I relate to the questions very well from a club golfer perspective, and as we've always said, that this podcast is really aimed at the everyday golfer, people out there, on the weekends, on the weekdays, trying to improve their game. I relate so much to these questions, so I'm going to ask the questions, Jamie, and you can give I'll be the mental and you be the master, if that's the way you want to look at it. So the first question. The relationship between focusing on executing the 3 C's and the positive impact it has on other mental emotional states. So I sort of read that and I think, is someone getting more out of the 3 C's than just for their golf game? Is it a deeper level? But certainly the 3 C's that we talked about, very, very popular topic, very, very popular little bit of content. So the relationship between focusing on executing the 3 C's and other positive impact it has on mental and emotional states. What's your take on that, Jamie?
Yeah, look, I think definitely the feedback has been that those 3 C's have been extremely popular.
And what are they again?
Clarity first, confidence second, and commitment third. So, I think the main thing is it's just helped to put a bit of structure around structure and purpose around people's processes. When they get to a golf shot, it's just providing them with a bit of structure and a bit of purpose, where prior to they were probably a little bit reactive and reacting to the game of golf. And so I think, that's where they've really probably felt very empowered. Now, in regards to having positive impacts on any other mental and emotional states, it's such a great question, because when we are in that state of focusing on, following a process, having some purpose behind what we do, and then ultimately committing to that, that's a very, very empowering state for us to perform in. So when we feel like we have a certain amount of control over what we're doing, again, that puts us in a very empowering state. So if you just put that alone, that's one of the empowering positive effects. But the other thing is it stops our mind from engaging in the don'ts and the fears and the doubts of the outcomes. And I think that is one of the biggest positive emotional elements that some of the listeners have been able to experience. It's just their mind is now not caught up in all that, the negatives or the doubts. And if we go back to that cognitive sequence again, if they're thinking about what they want to do, the emotional state that's going to trigger, the behaviours that's going to create, and then ultimately the impact on outcomes, it's fantastic. So I think, that's one of the main reasons why, some of the listeners out there are feeling other beneficial benefits from it. Good gratitude, being grateful for each shot, not allowing negative shots to stick and stay as long. That's just a benefit of being in a more empowering emotional state. So, again, great question, and I've had a lot of thought behind it. So it's great.
I guess when I reflect on a personal level, and this is new for me, as you know, and I'm probably a couple of weeks ahead in the learning part of this journey than the listeners are, obviously because we're doing it in advance and we're talking about it in advance, and then we're turning it into this piece of podcast content. So I can absolutely concur that there is a change. If you can implement this strategy, this 3C strategy on a week in, week out basis, every time you do it, it becomes more, I guess, for me to access that state is closer. So the downsides, whether it's letting some positive, negative thoughts slip in, they're the harder parts to access, and just the part that you want to achieve is really is becoming easier to access. It's not there yet for me, so it's not 2 weeks wonderland and it's all perfect. But I know I've played a fair bit of golf in the last couple of weeks. I played 36 holes on Sunday. We had our round on Wednesday, and then the week before that. So there's been a bit going on. So it's, I guess, from a when I look at it a learning development perspective, that's my background at back in the car days. It doesn't happen overnight. You've got to put it in, and once you put it in, it starts to get easy to access. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and it's just like anything, whether it's, people want to go to the gym and they want to add, 10 kilos of muscles or lose 15 kilos of body fat, changing eating habits. Just because you do that for 3 days doesn't mean you're going to look in the mirror on the fourth day and there's going to be a change.
Yep, absolutely.
But at least, some of the responses I've had in feedback is at least people now know they've got some direction in their mental game. They know what they need to start to do, and obviously having the understanding of it's not easy to begin with, but if you commit to it over the next 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks and then continue after that, you're going to make changes and you're going to see the positive benefits. So it's it's great.
So the second question that we've put into today's Q&A is, how do I get in the zone or flow state? Zone or flow state? Can you define zone or flow state? Is there a way to define it?
It's basically the same thing. So what people perceive is they perceive the zone or the state of flow is a state of unconsciousness. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, I'm just doing it. Now, I think that potentially could be another mental game myth, is that when people in the past have accessed the zone or the flow state, it's not that they are thinking of absolutely nothing and they're away in fairyland. It's actually that their mind is focused and engaged with one thing and one thing only at a time. So that's what, being in the zone, being present to the moment, that's what that really is. It's not about a state of unconsciousness. It's about a state of being engaged with one thing at a time. And I'm trying to think, I think it was Bryson DeChambeau mentioned something last year or early this year, that when he was on the course and he was feeling nervous, he wanted to actually stay present to that nervousness, because that meant he was in the moment. He was being present. He was in the zone because he was aware of what he's feeling. So we look at a lot of club level golfers and they're not really aware of how they're feeling because they've got so many things running through their mind. But if we can just bring it back to being present and focusing on one thing at a time, that is actually going to give us a greater chance of accessing flow state or the zone, and also being a lot more aware of how am I feeling right now and how do I now manage it or deal with it? I think that's the little bit of a myth there around the zone and flow state, is just to train ourselves to be present to the moment and focus on one thing at a time.
Very good.
So
very good. Yeah. That's why I asked. Can you define zone or flow? Because it's obviously more to it. So that's a really good question and a great response. And And I think, once again, you put that into place and it'll start to become a more normal and practiced behaviour. Third question we've got here. Some days I can see the line in the greens and other days I can't. So obviously a putting question, 27 to 40 shots of the game, can be taken up by that discipline. So,
and this question's another really good one, and the answer will actually also refer to the question prior about zone and flow state. So we touched on this with you in episode 2 about visualization, and sometimes the left brain overthinking, overanalyzing can actually impact your ability to visualize. So we've sort of discussed that in episode 2, but I'm going to take another component to it now just to add a little bit more depth to that question. So when we look at visualization, which is a mental skill, okay, it's a mental task that our mind has to be performing at a decent level to be able to achieve that state. So if we look at brain functioning and what goes into having high quality brain functioning, things like the amount of sleep that you've had the night before or a few nights before, your hydration levels. If you are dehydrated, the quality of your brain function is dramatically reduced. So you're not going to be able to think clearly. You're not going to be able to create clarity. You're not going to be able to actually imagine and visualize things. Almost your brain functions in a very sort of slow, blurry state, not only with thought, but also with imagination. And nutrition is another one. Nutrition is a big one on having good quality brain functioning, and also then stress. If we are under stress, that also has a big impact on the ability of our brain functioning. So I would say the great thing for people to be able to do here is if some days they can see things clearly and they're really in a good, calm, clear mental state, to stop and analyze, what have I done the last 48 hours? What have my sleeping patterns been like? What have my hydration levels been like? Maybe they haven't had any alcohol for 3 days and they've actually, really focused on drinking more water. Just find out what are the patterns of behavior the few days prior helped access or achieve that state, and for the opposite as well. If you can't see the line on the greens, things like head colds, headaches, they also impact. So have a look at, again, if I can't see it, what have I been doing the last couple of days to cause my brain to function like this? So, they're really key areas that maybe we don't spend as much time and energy and attention on from a mental game point of view as we should.
And I guess that goes back somewhat a little bit to that whole, routines, as we discovered in last week's podcast, was, the pre-round routine. If you're aware of that, if you do a little bit of analysis on when you have not been able to see the lines and you do the analysis as you suggest, is it a reflection on your pre-round routine, as we discovered in routines? Very good. Yeah,
that's right. And the other thing too, like with some of my professional players, we put in an eating and a hydration plan, like a eating and hydration routine during the round of golf. So you're going to eat every 3 holes. You're going to have a snack. The caddy just gives them the food on the 3rd, 6th, 9th, 12th, 15th holes. After every hole, caddy's going to give them a bottle of water to sip after every hole. And that's just a routine to help make sure that they're getting the hydration, the nutrition that's required to keep their brain functioning at a high level. So, again, most club golfers, they probably will forget a lot of that during the round of golf. So, it's a key ingredient for it, for sure.
It's probably the worst part of my game, and you've probably noticed, and you politely probably haven't commented, but the whole hydration part for me is ridiculous. I'm terrible at it. So. Yeah. There's my takeout, my homework from this. So
exactly.
Question 4: thoughts on being positive on the golf course versus being realistic. Now, I found this question a little bit perplexing. Not in a bad way, in a good way, because I struggle to see the disconnect between being realistic and being positive and being different. I'm obviously struggling with it, but I just found it made me think, because I'm genuinely try to be a positive person on the golf course, and I try to be realistic. Sometimes the two don't go hand in hand, but I don't know. I'm waffling on, but it's your question to answer.
It's a really great question, and obviously it comes from Marcus. He plays a lot of golf, so again, very deep question. Put a lot of thought behind it. It's a great question, and I think I might have mentioned in one of the episodes about I'm not a big fan of the words positive and negative, and positive especially, like positive self-talk, especially, like fluffy positive self-talk. It's just unproductive and it doesn't help us. I think I mentioned that sometimes I find positive self-talk is a safety blanket for making us feel better when we fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we're positive, what ultimately, again, what that's doing is we're being overly positive to potentially avoid reality, like avoid the fact that I'm not comfortable or confident or competent in this moment. So I'm going to be positive and just, talk myself into doing things. But because the reality is we don't like the reality. We don't like the fact that, you know what, my short game is horrible at the moment. I'll stand over, like, for my reality. On the weekend, played Long Island. I've done a little bit of work on my game the last sort of, I suppose, 2 or 3 weeks, had a lesson, spent more time on my full swing than anything else. And I'm starting to actually get an understanding of what I need to be doing from a technical point of view and starting to hit the ball quite nicely. But short game-wise, I had a lesson and I still haven't spent much time on it, and I still don't really know or can't access that comfortability over the ball that I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable and I feel like I know what I'm doing. So Sunday it was just, my short game was my pitching from 30 yards and in was just horrible, but it felt horrible. Now, I have to be, if I'm being positive and go, oh, no, I'm just going to commit to it and it'll all be good, that's not going to help me perform. But if I actually say, okay, I'm uncomfortable here, what do I need to do to get myself comfortable? I can either go 2 ways. I can either go, well, I'm going to putt it from 30 yards out, or I'm going to get my 3-wood out and putt it from 30 yards out, or I'm going to actually really sit in this uncomfortability and just try to find the feel that my coach was giving me. And if I hit a bad shot, I hit a bad shot. But I want to just, because I know there's a stage that I need to work through that I'm at now where it's uncomfortable. I need to step into that so I can actually start to move forward with my short game. This is the big hurdle. If I don't step into this big hurdle, then I'm never going to become a good chipper or a good pitcher of the ball. So, but that's the reality of it. If I was positive, I wouldn't actually access that hurdle. I wouldn't want to go anywhere near it because it's too uncomfortable. So, the thoughts on being positive versus realistic, I think, is a great question and is unique and unique to each individual how that plays out. But I think the question that I want sort of Marcus and everyone else that sort of struggles with this is just ask yourself, what are you avoiding by not being realistic? Because we know when we're being positive, but there's no depth behind it. Like, you can lie to me and maybe get away with it, but you can never, ever, ever lie to yourself. So this is where positive self-talk is. A lot of the time we'll be positive, but our subconscious mind goes, nah, you're talking crap now. Like, you don't really believe in that. So therefore, what's going to happen is if you lie to yourself, then you start to ingrain a pattern of distrust. So then you try to step into that positive self-talk or that positive thought, and during performance, during impact, during the in-shot, that's when you're going to actually start to lack the trust because you're lying to yourself.
So are you saying that, say you've got that pain point in your game, the short game, that's familiar to you, and as you mentioned, and to me, as you know, it's okay to acknowledge that. If you know that it's something that you're working on and you have to work towards getting it better, and maybe it's okay to acknowledge that, and it's okay to keep trying in that moment. Is that right? Yeah.
It's not okay to acknowledge it.
Right. So
it is crucial and imperative to your growth to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the most important thing.
Sorry, I thought you were telling me I said the wrong thing, but I just underestimated how important it is. Okay.
Yeah. We cannot underestimate the absolute importance of it, because then we start to tap into that little bit of freedom to fail state as well. Just like, it's okay if I mess this up. That frees us up to be able to then commit to what we're trying to achieve in the face of failure.
That was a great little snippet that I sent you across there, which leads us into that next question.
Yeah.
Is there a balance between having the freedom to fail and not caring enough?
Yes. Again, these questions are like just ridiculously next level questions, because obviously this person has gone out and tried to access that freedom to fail, but maybe gone a little bit too far with not being connected or engaged enough to the shot, and their arousal level has dipped, to an unhealthy level where they just don't care. So yeah, there is definitely a balance, and all I suppose the thing to look out for people with this question is, do I have clarity on what I'm trying to do? Because when we get that balance between, freedom to fail and not caring, we actually don't have any clarity or structure in the shot we're trying to hit. We just step up and swing the golf club, and we don't care where it goes, which means we're not really connected to trying to hit to a shot. We're just accepting of whatever shot comes out. So yeah, we still need to activate that clarity, that purpose. What am I trying to do here? With that ability to just accept whatever happens. So again, great question.
Okay. So the next question. I noticed the storytelling or narrative I create around my own golf game. It's not healthy. How can I change this? Now, I'm just going to give this person some comfort that it is possible. And I may have said that I was a positive person, but in the past, there's been no greater person that's beat themselves up on a golf course than me. And it's taken a long time, and not in a bad way, not in an aggressive, throw clubs way, all that sort of thing, but just inside my own headspace, I wasn't a great, spent some time not in a great space on the golf course, and basically contributed towards me not enjoying it. It is absolutely possible to retrain and get out of that habit, and by creating, better habits. It's absolutely possible. So whatever the answer that is coming here from Jamie, you can do it.
Yeah. Well, it's such a really great, because it comes back to that cognitive sequence we spoke about. It's about, firstly, we need to be able to get clarity and an understanding of how our thoughts are happening, what quality thoughts we are having. Because we have that 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day, it's very easy for us to lose connection to what is actually going on internally. So again, it's first step one is massive congrats on being able to get access to what the hell is going on between our mind, like between our ears, because sometimes that can be difficult. So secondly, acknowledging the fact that you realize, wow, okay, this is not good. Again, all these levels of awareness, acknowledgement are so crucial in being able to then step forward into the new you, so to speak. So, for me, it's about accepting your reality, like from a golf identity point of view, to really identify, who am I as a golfer right now? What type of golfer shows up on the golf course? Is it someone like me, for example, at the moment? My short game is really, really well below par for a 7-8 handicap, even below par for that number. So for me, it's about identifying, this is actually who I am as a golfer right now. And yeah, I want to be better, but right now this is actually who I am. When you accept your reality, then you can actually start to change the narrative. But this is where you have to make sure you understand where you are, so the story, the narrative, the story, 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 the sto can actually be written along those lines. So, and then the important thing is, once you write that or write down that process of who am I as a golfer, what are my tendencies, what are my patterns right now, write that down, but then write another script of who do I want to become. Okay, and that narrative, who do I want to become and how am I going to achieve that? What things do I need to do to become that person? And give yourself a timeline. How long may it take me to get to that stage? And then probably add 2 or 3 more months. Just because we're generally impatient creatures, so we want things a lot earlier than what we may get them. So, but yeah, I think just to be able to change the narrative and not be so harsh on yourself, you have to measure your performance against who you are, not who you either pretend to be or who you want to be. So, so again, really, really great question. And, setting that expectation for the day a little bit closer to your reality will actually just also start to change that little bit of a narrative. Another great thing there is just after each shot, a good exercise is after every single shot, tell yourself one thing that you absolutely loved about that shot. Just one thing that you loved about it. It may be that, you committed to hitting the shot. It may be that you laughed at yourself when you hit a poor shot. It may be whatever it is. Just think of one thing that you loved about that shot, and that will distract the old pattern and the old narrative from kicking in. If it kicks in 15 seconds after, it normally does, by that stage our emotion is diffused quite a bit. So then the narrative won't be as harsh, or the thoughts associated with that performance won't be anywhere near as harsh.
Gold, mate. Absolute gold. Well, whoever asked that question, congrats for asking it, because it's absolute ripper. And as Jamie's just articulated, you can build on where you are, and you can build into where you want to be and what you want to look like. Very good.
Yeah.
So
great.
I think we uncorked a few different perspectives on routines last week, Jamie. Set the tongues wagging somewhat. So we've got a question, and I think we've answered a little bit, but when should our routine start? So, we might want to just recap on that, all of the different forms of routine, and when do you start accessing what we talked about last week?
Yeah, look, I think this one, this is a great question, and it, again, is a fairly fluid answer, meaning it's going to be different for everyone. I know years ago when Tiger Woods was about 12, I think it was, he saw a sports psych in the US, and they actually created what they called Tiger's 10-yard line, which basically meant the NFL football, the US football, they had the 10-yard lines. What they would do is Tiger's ball would be in the middle of the 10-yard line. So he would step over the first line and switch on. Then he'd go through his process, go through his routine, hit the shot. And then when he was finished with the shot, finished analysing it, finished, rehearsing what he would like to do next time, and stepped over the second-yard line, he would then switch off. So that was his trigger to help him start the routine and ultimately finish the routine. So for a lot of the golfers that I've worked with, one of the really great keys to help switch a routine on and get that routine started and switch a routine off is using your golf glove. So put your glove on, and that is your trigger to switch on. Go through your process, get the number, get the shot, get clarity, get confidence, get commitment, execute, go through a little bit of a post shot, and then once you're done with that, take your golf glove off and completely switch off. That has been a really great practical tool for golfers of all levels to just help switch on and switch off and put some structure around when their routine should start. There's going to be some fluidity to this because you might be 20 metres, 30 metres from your ball, and you might actually have to start possibly, or you might start analysing where it is, what shot you have, and that's okay. providing that process is executed at what we classify as a low level of intensity. You're just calmly thinking about it. You're not intensely analysing what's the situation, where's my ball, what do I need to do. Just calmly sort of using that intensity. And then when you get close to that ball, using the glove on, glove off is, as I said, is a great one to train. So, and when I say train, we actually have to train that on the range. So hit a shot, glove off, club in the bag, look around, pick a different target, glove on, switch on, hit the shot, post-shot routine, glove off, club in the bag, and go through that one shot at a time. Because we've got to train our brain to prepare itself for, for competitive golf. And I know years ago, Jason Day, when he decided he wanted to try and become number one in the world, he was out in a practice session one day, and there was a golf rider sitting on the balcony of his home club, and he was just about to go home, but he said, I'll watch JD for 10 minutes, and he sat there for about 3.5, 4 hours watching Jason practice. He was mesmerised by the fact that JD treated every shot like it was the final hole of a major. So he would put his glove on, go through his long routine that we know he's got with that closing his eyes, staring at the target, walks in really slowly, and he would do that with every single shot. But funnily enough, he would have like a 2-minute break in between every shot, just switch off, and then he'd have to switch on, increase the intensity, then switch off. He was really training himself to be prepared and conditioned for tournament golf. So, and then not long after that, maybe 6 months after that's when he reached world number one. So, I think it's an important one for listeners out there to, if that's a process they want to be able to execute in a competitive round of golf, they have to train it first.
How would should everyone have like a documented type practice routine? Is that something like, we talked about journaling the thoughts on the golf course. Should you journal your practice routine so you actually stick to it and follow a process? Maybe not as elaborate over 4 hours like Jason Day, if that's not possible. But is that going to that to me is, I get caught up hitting 50 balls. Within 10 minutes, I'm back at the range servant. Dishing out another 50 balls, 100 sent down the range, and I have a bit of a routine that I go through, but it's essentially whacking balls and just trying to make different shot shapes.
Yeah.
But I reckon I should document it, and I should go through a structure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how you just mentioned how you practice, just beating balls and hitting different shot shapes with the same club repetitively over and over and over again. One, that's got no relationship, or I'll say very little relationship to what you have to do in a competitive round of golf. The randomness of golf, one 7-iron, then a little chip shot, then a putt, then a driver, then a 7-iron off a hanging lie. Like I won't say. Well, actually, I will say you would probably experience very little negative impact on your golf game if you never hit balls like that again in your life. It's just, and you're at what I classify as a very high level of golf. Playing off 3 or 4 or 5.
I thought you were going to use the E word then.
What word's that?
The elite word, but no, it didn't come.
Well,
no,
you got to earn those stripes.
Sub-elite. Definitely.
But for most, even for mid to high handicap golfers, they're in a similar pattern. Just because their mechanics aren't as good as yours, they can still train themselves to be, a lot more prepared for competitive golf. And obviously competence is going to play a big part in that for them. Like with me and my short game, competence, I'm low on the chart of competence at the moment, but I'm working through that. That for me at the moment is my priority before I can actually access some of the other stuff. It's just making sure we put things in the right list of priority for people, and yeah, it's a big one. So, charting things and putting purpose into your practice. Like instead of hitting 50 balls, 10 balls with a purpose, with a structure that relates to the pattern of behavior you need to execute in a competitive environment, those 10 balls are going to be way more profitable. So, yeah, definitely.
Oh, there's another task on the things to do related to golf list for me. Thank you very much. So last question that we've got that we'll go through, and that'll wrap us up just nicely for a nice little easy to digest podcast for today. During the thought journal process, I noticed my mind wandering a lot when over the ball. What can I do to switch it on for every shot?
Yeah. I suppose that would almost come back to that last question as well, using the glove, using some sort of trigger to switch you on. Having a chat to a client this morning in the US, and he was discussing the use of a yardage book when he gets to a shot. That's the first thing he can recall doing every single shot is he open up his yardage book and actually have a look at what's going on. So, we just discussed putting a trigger word in there, for every shot to help him engage, right here, right now, or switch on. So, for the listeners, they can use their glove, but if switching on is a big thing, they might want to actually write it on their glove, just put on. So every time they put their glove on, that word on is there just to remind them and engage. And again, more importantly, train that to be your default setting. So when you go on practice, have short, sharp. That's why I love doing sort of 5-ball blocks, is because I say to people, here's 5-ball blocks. You've got 25 balls, but make sure they've got a purpose. Make sure you're really switching on for every single shot and you're engaged with what you're doing. That's quite a challenging task for the mind to do over and over again, but it's a very important task to help people train and condition their mind to be able to perform the way they want to under that competitive environment. So, as you're probably noticing and seeing, a lot of it comes down to the relationship between training versus practicing. Practicing is just beating balls with no real purpose, no real structure, just getting the reps in. Training is, I am training my mechanics. I'm training my mind. There's specific intent and purpose behind your training sessions, and that's why a lot of people don't transfer their practice form, so to speak, to the competitive environment, because they're not training themselves for a competitive environment. They're training it for a casual, relaxed, sunny range session to make them feel good. That's not golf. Golf doesn't always make us feel good.
In relation to this question and the mind wandering part, so obviously whoever's asked this question, that's their pain point.
Yeah.
And for me, in my journey back to golf, in the last 10 years, my mind wandering was probably one of the single biggest challenges that affected the efficacy of my game. So can I give you a couple of things that I did, and you can either to critique, and it may or may not help this particular person who asked this question, but there were definitely two things that I remember having implemented once I acknowledged that my mind was wandering and distracting me from hitting good shots. Now, for me, my driving is my strength, but and with my short game being my weakness, the effectiveness of my driving is everything, because if I'm off the fairway, then I'm playing catch up.
Yeah.
I knew that my grip tension was leading to poor shots. So I had a little saying, and just before I take the club away, and you may or may not have noticed this, I actually release the pressure of my grip.
Yep.
So once I release the pressure of my grip, that is my trigger. And it's almost like I say to myself, release the gas. I don't say that anymore, but more it's just to release the pressure of the grip. I almost effectively, so soft it's barely holding on, and then I just take the club away from there. And once my hands go loose on that club, I know now that I'm not thinking about anything other than just sending it. So that's the first thing I did. But it was always my strong part, so it wasn't that hard for me to adopt that my iron game was where my mind was wandering, because obviously it's the second shot, it's shot to the green, and that's when the don't thin it, don't miss it right, don't hit it in the bunker, don't would come into the game. Obviously, I had to get rid of that, and I had what I call my 1-2 trigger. Yep. So I put into practice. I'd go out and play socially. I wouldn't hit any balls on the range. I would go out and play, and I would walk up to every shot. I'd have my practice swing. I'd walk up to every shot, and I'd say 1, 2, and on 2 I would be firing the club. So 1, 2, go. Mm-hmm. And after, like all cognitive training, it took some time, but I did notice a point that when I walked up to the ball, I didn't have to say 1, 2, but my mind was clear.
That ended up becoming your default setting, which is fantastic. Now, remember, if we go back to a comment I made before about the flow state or being in the zone,
yes,
it's not a state of unconsciousness. It's a state of you focusing on one thing at a time. And that's exactly what you just explained with your 1-2. You had a process your mind could focus on and commit to with every shot, which would help to put you in that flow state or the zone, because you're just committing to that one thing. Now, when the question is about my mind wandering a lot, your mind's not now engaged in one thing. It's jumping from, a thousand things. Now, there's a variety of different reasons for why a club level golfer might have a thousand things running through their mind. There's some, I've had sessions with people where we talk about they feel guilty about being out on the golf course midweek when they've got 1,000 things they need to be doing. So there's just so many different factors that is the reason behind why your mind wanders. So I just want the listeners to just be aware of what is the driver behind my mind wandering. Is it because a lot of the time it may not be a lack of mental ability or mental focus. People can focus. It's just that they haven't created the right environment for them to stop their mind thinking about all the other things and to allow themselves the ability to just be present to the moment. So, the first thing is just for everyone to be aware of what's the driver behind their mind wandering. Is it they haven't trained their mind to have that quality of focus with things in other aspects of their life, and they may need to conditional train their mind to create better quality focus, or is it something that's more external, in regards to, they've just got 1,000 things that they need to be doing and they're feeling guilty for being out there. So that's their sort of, I suppose, coping mechanism for sort of feeling like it's okay because they're still thinking about doing these things even though they can't action them. So,
So when you're out there, you're out there. So be there.
Yep.
And you can't do it. If you're out there, you've made a decision to be out there. So just be out there and be there. And whatever else that you're dealing with outside or in and around that, that'll still be there. You can go back to that. But when you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
I guess
absolutely.
That's what I hear.
Absolutely. I experienced that, a couple of years ago. I couldn't play midweek because I hadn't allowed myself the freedom to be there and switch my mind off worrying about all the other things that I had to do or get done.
Yeah.
And it was a waste of time. I wasn't being productive with the things I needed to get done, and I wasn't actually enjoying my time switching off. So that's why we've created that Wellness Wednesdays. We've allowed ourselves the freedom to commit to having that morning off and just have fun, leave everything off the golf course. So when we're done, we can actually revisit that.
Yeah.
So, So that's great.
Well, mate, I missed the Wellness Wednesday today. We've covered off the 8 questions. It sounds like you're getting close to going to do what you need to do up there in Sydney. Is there anything else that we need to bring to the listeners?
No, I think that's great as a starting point. I really think, as I said, we're starting to engage in some really good quality communication between the listeners and ourselves, and hopefully starting to have a really nice positive impact on, their enjoyment for the game and then ultimately their performance in the game. So, it's fantastic. Just appreciate everyone's feedback.
Absolutely. I'm enjoying the journey and I'm certainly learning a heap. 36 holes on Sunday, and what did I have? I think I had 7 birdies over those 36 holes, and that's all I remember. that puts a smile on my face today when I think about those 36 holes. 7 birdies, a lot of drives. Okay, I had a few double bogeys, but anyway, I had 7 birdies, and that's, you know for me, Jamie, that's a lot of birdies. But
that's some good golf.
Missed my Wellness Wednesday today. Enjoy it up there. And thank you for tuning in to the Mental Mastery Golf Podcast. You can follow Jamie at Jamie_Glazier on Instagram. You can go to his website at daretodream.com.au. Sign up for the newsletter. There's big things coming. And we look forward to staying in touch. Jamie, enjoy that up there in Sydney, and I'll speak to you next week, mate.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
No problems.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Mastery Golf Podcast by Dare to Dream. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and head over to daretodream.com.au for exclusive access to the free video program, 8 Tips to an Unbreakable Mental Game. Join us next time on the Mental Mastery Golf Podcast.